All right, guys. So I just want to wrap up air pollution here with a couple quick things to mention and just some things to highlight. So in class, we're talking about your topography and the climate, how all these factors contribute to air pollution issues. Well, there's a thing here called the grasshopper effect, the grasshopper transport that we want to be a little bit aware of, and how this moves some of these pollutants to polar regions. So think about a grasshopper jumping, and let me get the, so grasshopper kind of bounces, goes from here to boing, boing, jumps like that. Well, what happens with grasshopper transport is pollutants evaporate from warm areas, get caught up in the currents of air, they move over towards the poles, and then they condense and precipitate in the cooler regions or the polar regions of the Earth. This is what can help move things like mercury and lead and these different pollutants up to the polar regions. It's why polar bears have mercury in their bodies. And then it accumulates in those food webs in those polar regions, leading to some of those big problems of biomagnification in certain top-level species. So again, grasshopper transport. Grasshopper jumps and jumps and jumps. Pollutants do the same thing, typically from warm areas towards cooler areas. From equatorial towards polar regions is a general trend for grasshopper transport. I had mentioned as we were leaving class this thing called Montreal Protocol. Big thumbs up here, positive. 1987, it phased out the use of chlorofluorocarbons, the CFCs, that contribute to the depletion of the ozone layer. Instead, HCFCs were substituted. They release far less chlorine, decreasing the impact of ozone depletion. It's been a positive. We see a great response from the ozone layer, in a sense, healing because of these decreased CFCs in the environment. So it's positive. The evidence is there that when we make the positive and the right steps, we can improve the environmental health and the quality of the air on this planet. The concern is the air pollution. And when we have air pollution, how does that hit people and impact humans? So a lot of our illness is related to intensity and duration of exposure. What's going on? How much are we being exposed to? All those different factors. Big thing to remember, or I'm going to underline and highlight here, is this thing, oh, that's not good, this thing called PM 2.5, particle matter size 2.5. Let me just underline that. So when the particle matters are at a certain size, then they become more problematic. These are linked to things like heart attacks, asthma, lung cancer, development abnormalities in fetuses, etc. Because those particles are small enough to get into your body, past all of your defense systems, and create some significant health problems. So asthma, bronchitis, health issues, it's due to a lot of these things. So normal bronchial tubes should be nice wide open. Bronchial tubes that are in spasm get constricted, leads to overinflation of the alveoli and just respiratory problems. Continued chronic bronchitis can lead into some serious lung issues and respiratory issues, sometimes emphysema and other significant health problems long term. So it's why we want good quality air. Here's our soybean crop. If we have sulfur, too much sulfur dioxide in the rain, acid rain, you damage the leaves of the plants. Now, if their leaves are damaged, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for those plants to photosynthesize, which equals a decreased crop yield, decreased revenue, etc. So there's direct financial reasons to have good quality air. You have higher crop yields, more profit, or a larger profit margin in the agricultural world. So we're always trying to get people to become more aware of this and make efforts and take steps to improving it. We mentioned in class acid precipitation or acid rain. I want you guys to remember which of those 6 pollutants contribute to acid rain. Now, normal rain should be in the mid-5s on the pH scale. If we get 5 or below, it starts disrupting aquatic ecosystems. So, sadly, look at where Illinois is at. I mean, most of Illinois is in the 4s when we talk about rainwater. So, a simple experiment. Next time it rains, collect some rainwater and let's measure the pH. See where it's at. And it's going to change throughout the year based on industry and air particles and pollutants and things like that. But if you're looking at an average in the 4s, that's going to impact all aquatic systems, Lake Springfield, lakes and ponds in our backyards, and places where we go to fish and for recreation. It's going to, or is already, influencing those aquatic ecosystems. On land, it just kills things. It kills these trees. Died because of acid rain. Too acidic, and those trees were weakened. They did not survive, and now that part of the forest is dead. So if it doesn't kill them outright, it does weaken the organism, put stress on them, which then may make those trees more susceptible to a fungal infection or a bacterial infection or an insect infestation or some other thing. So it's not always one factor that causes a problem. It becomes a combination effect. We talked about that synergistic effect idea with water pollution. Same idea here. You could have a synergistic effect with multiple things impacting these species. All right, now, how do we control it? Well, we got to reduce the pollution production. Sounds simple, but that's the problem. Reducing production. So that's why I was stressing identify the source. What is a source that produces a greater amount or the greatest amount of pollution? Can we work with that source to decrease production of pollution? So energy sector is a big one. Can we conserve energy? Simply reducing electricity usage improves air quality, saves you money too. So how do we get more conservative with energy consumption? Turn your lights off. Turn your thermostat down 1 or 2 degrees. Get more energy efficient vehicles. There's just a long list of things we can do that will help decrease energy consumption, which means less air pollution. Particulate removal. So as we're producing energy, if it's traditional coal-fired power plants, can we trap those particles in filters? So the challenge here is those filters cost money. Does the industry want to spend the money to reduce the particulate being produced? That goes back to federal laws and regulations. Can we shift more energy production to renewable energies? Let's use solar, wind, geothermal, etc., and decrease the reliance on fossil fuel consumption, which leads to a lot of our air pollution issues. So lots of different ways we can actually control air pollution in different methods and different tactics. The goal is using lots of strategies, not just a single one, but can we combine a bunch of different strategies? So when we're looking at control, how can we remove sulfur? Well, switch varieties of coal. Can we move away from the high sulfur based coals and shift to the others? Now you get into economics, politics, etc. Can we use alternative fuels, alternative energies, solar, wind, etc.? Nitrogen oxides. Those are produced when we superheat the nitrogen, 650 degrees Celsius. Well, staged burners can still break down the product, but it doesn't push it to the same level of temperature to prevent the formation of nitrogen oxides. But again, this takes change in technology, change in the burner systems we use for different industries. There's an investment of money to be able to move to this, maybe a deterrent. Hydrocarbon control. Can we simply completely combust fossil fuels so we're not producing those pollutants? Because a lot of the pollutants are the result of incomplete combustion of fuel, meaning we're not using all the fuel. Some of it is, in a sense, being wasted. So, again, additional ways to control air pollution. Some of these are going to be more accepted than others because of the financials behind it. And the last thing to mention here, clean air legislation. Clean Air Act of 1970. It's been revised again and again and again and again. The basics: identify the critical pollutants. And these are big things I want you guys to remember for Wednesday's exam. There were 6 critical pollutants. What are those? The Clean Air Act established ambient air quality standards. We're not going to worry about what the levels are because those continuously get changed based on the administration. They move those around. Those should be established based on science, not on politics. But that's a challenge to deal with. And then it works. I mean, Clean Air Act works. It saves lives, and in the big picture, it saves a lot of money. And this is where we get into such a fight. Oh, it's this war on coal, get rid of coal, because if you do, it's going to destroy the economy. It's simply going from option A to option B. You move into solar. There's billions of dollars in the solar industry to be made if more people were doing it, if more sources were producing solar, and etc. So there's a lot of money associated with Clean Air Act and getting this to happen. In the big picture, it is good for the environment and human health. Those two are linked together. So where you have to try to get more people aware of this and recognizing that this is an important issue because we all breathe the air. No matter where it's produced, it's coming around to us and we're all going to be breathing it. So the big challenge with the Clean Air Act and pollution, it's often tied to industry and the economy. Those tend to be connected. And depending upon the administration in power, sometimes there's a lot of defunding and deregulation of EPA, so that way they can't monitor pollution and simply say, oh, well, we didn't realize these areas were polluting. The economy's great, so who cares about the pollution? And if you put restrictions on the industry, then that's going to hurt the economy. And it's not true. It's blatantly inaccurate to say environmental restrictions are bad for the economy. If we didn't have environmental restrictions, we would have much greater health issues in this country and the world. So those restrictions help prevent major medical expenses associated with a poor environment. So those are tough topics to deal with and challenges that environmental science is constantly trying to work with. But hopefully we can get more people just educated and aware of what clean air does and why it is so important for all of us. No matter where you live, no matter what you do for a living, clean air is important.